this opportunity to partner with Linda and really learn from her about some things she's experienced in her career and her life, and really think about different ways that I can engage cultures and backgrounds and experiences that I haven't with a fresh set of eyes. I think every experience and circumstance you bring to the table, some of your own experiences, but then you can create new ones.
Because I think honestly, as you had said before and what I've said in other situations, you really learn more about yourself when you're challenged and when you're kind of uncomfortable and have to push yourself to think differently is when you really learn more about what you're capable of. So I look forward to it, to having healthy conversation, to have healthy conflict, to learn a different perspective and find ways that I can then blend that into my own persona and how I see the world and through a different lens, and really find a way to broaden my own gaze from maybe what I've seen before. Even though I like to think I've had a broad range of understanding and experience through my networks, my friends, my family, I'm always open to learning. I'm an insatiable learner, so have it be through academics, through people, or through work, I'm always open to learning more and just kind of putting myself through those experiences so that I can come out better the other side and help the community come out better the other side, however I may.
So I have to tell you that I've already experienced some discomfort and a little bit of challenge to be more vulnerable in sharing my own thoughts and feelings. I've been partnered with a wonderful person, but in our conversation I found out we come from a very different place in the way we grew up in our early experiences. And so even though we've kind of ended in similar jobs and in kind of similar viewpoints, I'm challenged to open myself up to be a friend with somebody I probably wouldn't have been a friend with if I hadn't started this process. And this is only week 1, so sure it's going to get more difficult.
Initial thoughts, I was like, man, he's young. He's young, and then being young, I was just talking to my wife. There's a lot of good things that can come from that as well, because they are our future, and they bring some creative thoughts, some new ideas, and you want to make sure that they can embrace things like diversity and things that come along with that, and what it really means to make changes in the community, particularly with the things that we're dealing with here in Milwaukee.
I think I became more conscious of my fatigue around discussing diversity and race and culture. And I have to be patient with myself and with others around that because it's something that I've worked in for most of my career. Sometimes I get impatient when I hear people have aha moments that I had a long time ago. So I think the biggest work I have to do is be patient with others that are working through their first exposures to some of these things, and try really hard not to become impatient and try and continue to be supportive, even though it can be very difficult when you're very aware of cultural differences. The biggest differences, of course, are, she works at a really large law firm and in environmental law, and I work in nonprofit, and the organization I work for is small. But a lot of the differences, we found some similarities in the differences too. Just the type of driven that we are was very similar. I think I'm going to continue the relationships we built. A lot of people in the group, we knew each other but didn't really know each other as well, hadn't been around each other in this type of setting. So keeping the relationships is probably the first step. And I think the other step is maintaining the relationship with Linda, and continuing to connect, because it really is all about building that partnership and being a part of this, development around the differences but similarities. So I think one of the things that I will get from this project that's most important is how to stay consistent with those relationships that are teaching me and that I'm also teaching in. And I think also just, being available for additional cohorts if there are difficult topics or conversations where I could be useful. But by and large, just really staying engaged.
I wouldn't say there's too many uncertainties or ambiguities. It was more so kind of leaning into it, right? What can I really learn from it, and how do I make new relationships and really learn from those different experiences that people had? It's definitely always somewhat necessarily a full fear, but maybe of a concern of how much do you share, right? That kind of that level loading of, is there judgment, is there opinion, or is it really everyone on the same place coming into this from a genuine perspective of wanting to build those relationships in an honest space. So I would say that with the relationship I had with my partner, that we really were able to learn and touch on different things: religion, theology, raising kids, political stances, some that we agreed with, some that we didn't, but it was all in a space of, let me hear you out, let's have the conversation. And I think we were in a good place the whole time without any types of concern. We normally had coffee talks, really. We met over lunch 1 or 2 times. I wouldn't say there was anything that was super tense. There was more so me learning, because she had experience in religion and had gone to seminary, and that's not a place where I've ever really had a lot of experience or exposure to. So a lot of times I was just asking to learn and kind of helping her, or asking her to help me understand really the depths of that and how that plays in. We've also talked about kind of current politics, and we very much agree in certain ways, where she has other family members that are on the opposite end and agree with her currently what's going on. So there's a lot of opportunity really for finding common ground, and then from learning from each other. And then as we're going through different life experiences, kind of supporting each other that way. In a business scenario, you can always lead with your head. And when you're working with people, you always have to be mindful of how you're leading with your heart. And when you're working in a scenario like this, where there are business components, there's relationships with people, you have to find a way to balance that out. So I would say becoming more comfortable about leading with head and heart concurrently versus one or the other and having an imbalance. Because you can disconnect with people unknowingly if you're too heavy-handed in one or the other.
In the workplace, really continuing to learn more about equity and inclusion is kind of where this program started me down that road. I'm excited that there are other people at my place of employment that are interested in that, and I've connected with that group. And so we're looking for other opportunities to figure out what do we need to do to take next steps at work. The aha moments were just sharing kind of the challenges we both faced, both in our personal lives growing up, kind of when we would experience the impact of race or discrimination, not personally, but just in the environment in which we lived. And then also because we shared a similar work role, kind of how diversity, equity, inclusion were being addressed in our workplaces, and what was our role in that. I think it was nice to have that person to bounce ideas off of, and to feel like the challenge kind of is universal. Well, I learned a lot of things. And one, she challenged me to think more broadly about what diversity is, and to be more open and willing to listen to different perspectives. So, yeah, she was just really kind of a gentle nudger towards thinking differently, and I appreciate that. I think more critically about the concept of inclusion. I think that was, in terms of the sessions, when we had the speakers come in, that was the biggest takeaway for me, to move away from that idea of equity, which is important, but really this concept that when we create an environment that doesn't simply give people equal opportunity, but actually gives them equal place and acceptance.
I think I was pleasantly surprised. Over a lot of years, you end up participating in a lot of functions and programs that just aren't genuine, or they don't go anywhere. But I think this really had a purpose behind it, and I was pleasantly surprised or pleased that everyone in there was open, and that was really what I really enjoyed most, the diversity of people and the ideas and the thoughts behind, the subjects that we were discussing. But, there's a big age difference between myself and my partner. And the other thing is he was raised in pretty much a small town, suburban environment where, I'm from the city. So, but the interesting thing about that, his initial occupation was a teacher, and he taught in an urban school. So it brought great conversation that way. We had a great time. Most of it, we did lunch, we did breakfast, we did a Bucks game. And now we're actually in the process of bringing our wives in so we can bring something together with the families. Probably one of the key things that I think came out of what we've been doing, not just with the partner, but as a group, is the listening piece, and just the active listening and not saying nothing, not giving those facial expressions to give someone an idea that you like or dislike what they're saying, and just listen and try to understand their point of view. No, there was one particular session, I think it was from a group perspective, heterosexualism. Sexualism. That really brought out some things that, I didn't think I was kind of so far right or left in areas when it comes to myself and how I think of myself or how people may perceive me. So that was interesting, and I think it will allow me to appreciate other people and where they may fall in certain spectrums.
When you think about the word partnership, the first thing that usually comes to mind is like-mindedness. And when you think about the people that are in the room or part of the cohort of Partnership Milwaukee, from an aesthetic standpoint, people are very different. So immediately you tend to feel as though there's going to be a lot of diversity in the sense of difference. As a facilitator, my initial gathering or takeaway was the profound common denominator of leaders who want to help make Milwaukee a great place to live and continue to be a great place to live. So whether I am born and raised in Milwaukee or whether I'm a transplant, the leaders that are part of this cohort share that common denominator. And what I really appreciate from a facilitation standpoint was the people's awareness of their differences and how to embrace that as it aligns toward the common ground of greatness through partnership.